Hi there, Joe Omani, Professor of Consulting at Cardiff University. Just thought I'd share this paper with you that I found today. And also it'll give you an insight into how to review academic papers if ever you are that way inclined. So I'm going to do both. So it's an interesting paper on ranking the criteria by which purchasing professional services occurs. So first of all, we're thinking, is it a decent paper? So management decision, 3-star journal, fairly solid. I actually prefer the 3-star journals to the 4-star journals because they tend to be written more in sensible English rather than pontificating in incomprehensible theory. The other useful thing about this journal is it gives you a summary here. So the aim of this paper is to report the findings of a global survey on decision criteria used and the importance attached to these criteria when purchasing professional services. So handy, so good headline. Key thing is methodology. Is the methodology credible? There's fortunately a summary of it here. 24 face-to-face interviews, so you can't generalize from 24, but there's a survey of 309 usable responses to an online survey. I'd be interested as to whether or not these came from one company or whether they were general survey and the criteria by which people were invited to respond to that survey. The findings, descriptive statistics. Well, I like descriptive statistics. I'm not a big fan of correlation studies for various reasons I won't go into now. But descriptive statistics reveal the main criteria split into two distinct groups, pre-qualifiers and final stage differentiators. Well, that's not particularly interesting. An exploratory factor analysis results in a reduced set of 11 factors. Again, not particularly interesting. I want the meat. The meat isn't in here, so we're going to have to do a bit of digging. What's original about it? I don't particularly care if it's original. Normally journals say something is original if it contributes to theory. I'm not a big fan of that approach to measuring quality. Anyway, so always important for academics to locate their studies in the literature review because they can then show that you're doing something innovative or creative. But for my scan, I'm going to skip this. Methodology, let's have a look at how they did it. So they started off with qualitative stuff, which is great. Looking at RFP documents from across the world, so that's fantastic. That got them 140 criteria, and then they did 20 face-to-face interviews and 4 telephone interviews with various professional services buyers. So that's good. So it's a variety of firms. And then there was an online survey. How did they get the criteria? Convenience and self-selection sampling. Well, that's better than doing it all in one firm. So this is good. So I'm happy with the methodology. They've provided details on the respondents, which is great, gives it a bit more credibility. And then there's the factor analysis, and this is really the meat. So this is the summary of the criteria which are ordered in terms of importance, by which buyers use to select consulting firms. Number 1, meeting client needs, the ability of the provider to provide customized solutions. Interesting, isn't that? So, my previous talk was all about sort of productizing, but sort of number 1, are you providing customized solutions? Well, that's great. Ability to provide challenging thinking, again, something you get more with customized, tailored approaches rather than off-the-shelf products. Bringing additional value, well, I'm not sure what's meant by that. You'd hope any consulting firm would bring additional value. Effectiveness, so this is about training. So are you measuring effectiveness? Now, this should be interesting to many firms because this is still really high scoring. a lot of firms don't measure their effectiveness or don't measure it particularly well. You know, they're keen to move on to the next project. So that's something perhaps you could provide a differentiator. The gravitas and personal presentation of the trainer, fine. Let's have a look. Okay, so there's a whole load of other stuff, knowledge of the industry, etc., etc. Let's go down to the bottom. What have we got? The number of trainers employed. Good to know that quantity isn't a substitute for quantity isn't a substitute for quality. Qualifications of the trainer. Now, there was a survey that Derry Hughes put out not so long ago, which was looking at whether consulting qualifications were valued by clients, and this confirms his survey, showing that they're not particularly prized by clients. What else isn't particularly bothered about? Membership, top clients. Publications, that's interesting, publications. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. Size of the company, not particularly interesting. Lowest price. Well, of course, if you're asking buyers what's their least favoured category, they will say lowest price. Those of us in consulting know that's not always the case, especially if you're going through procurement. Although, I would always say never go for lowest price. Always price yourself toward the top. What was I going to go back to? Publications. Yeah, so I would say that this was ranked low because it's not part of the decision so much in terms of buyers, but it is part of the way in which you get buyers to take you seriously. So I would say it's a good part of attracting people to your firm rather than actually converting them. So I'd see it as part of the marketing process. Good. Okay, so interesting. I'll share the link I've got to this. It was shared by the second author, Andy Morehouse, who's doing some interesting stuff on AI at the moment. You should check him out. So we've got the criteria, we've got the weightings, and then they do a factor analysis really to see if things can be summarised in different ways. And they have done that. There we go. The factors are descriptive and they are in the areas of competence, which is most important, knowledge and understanding, which is actually they're all scored fairly equally until we get to reputation, organisational capability, and cost. That's interesting. You should note here that these types of scales tend to be 1, which is the most important. So this stuff here tends to be most important. This stuff here tends to be least important. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting paper. I thought I'd share it. And also it might be an overview of a useful overview of how academics review papers. Usually I tell my students abstract, introduction and conclusion, but actually there's a little bit more to it than that, understanding the methodology in terms of whether it's credible or not. Anyway, I hope that was useful. Take care. Cheerio.